Alright everyone, welcome back to a brand new video. So in this video, I'm going to go ahead and implement our guild ban log feature. Basically, whenever we ban a user, we're going to go ahead and save a record to the database to keep track of the action of banning a user. Okay, now a couple things that I want to mention is that there's actually an event called guild ban add, and this event is emitted whenever you ban a user from the guild. And some people might wonder, well, should I implement the logic inside an event handler for this event, or should I just implement the logic whenever I ban a user with my ban command? Okay, so let's say for example, if you don't have a ban command and you just want to listen to this guild ban add event, you could do that, but there are some downsides. So whenever a guild member is banned, and what I mean by this guild ban add feature or this guild ban add event is whenever you actually use the built-in feature to ban someone. Let's say if I were to ban Me6, for example, right? It would trigger this guild ban add event, okay? And you would get this guild ban parameter, and this parameter, or I should call this instance of guild ban, would give you a couple properties. It would give you the client, the guild, partial reason, and user, okay? Now, does this actually give you all of the necessary items that you need, or the necessary properties that you need? Well, so if you depend on just this guild ban instance, you can get the reason, which is what you enter in this text box whenever you ban a user. But I don't think you can actually get the person who banned the user from this object over here. I think you can actually get the user who banned the user if you actually fetch the audit logs, because if you actually use the ban feature over here, you can actually just get the audit logs and it'll tell you who actually initiated the ban. Okay, so but that would obviously be an extra step. But if you were to use the actual command, like if you have your own ban command, let's say I did something like question mark ban 123 for the member ID, and then a reason, you would actually know who the user is being, or you would actually know who is banning the user, who the banned user is, and you'd obviously also be able to get the reason as well. Okay, so there are some pros and cons with depending on the event versus the command, but I think ultimately using the command is way better. I mean, it will still trigger the guild ban add event, but like I said, it just won't tell you who banned the user. Okay, so you have to figure out what you think is better. I ultimately think that depending on the command is a lot better. So with that being said, let's actually go ahead and get started with the actual tutorial. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and implement a guild ban command. So it's going to allow us to ban users from our guild. So let's go and do that. So inside of our code, we're going to go inside commands, and we're going to go ahead and create a command. I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to go inside my terminal because this is a Slappy project. So I can easily just create a command with the CLI tool. So we're going to create a command, and I'll call this ban, and the category is just going to be mod. So I'll create a command for me. Okay. Let me make sure my bot is up and running. Okay, it is. So let me just test this out. I think the prefix, I'm not sure what the prefix is. All right, I was actually in the wrong guild, but that's okay. So right now, if I do the guild prefix and then ban, you're going to see that it's going to work. But obviously, we need to change up the logic so that way we can actually pass in the member's ID as well as the reason. Okay, so you can see right now the basic, it just sends a message back. But let's go ahead and change this up so that way we can take in the member ID as well as the reason. Okay, so the way this is going to work is right now we have all of the arguments stored inside an array. You can see right over here, we have this args array. Okay, so let me go ahead and console log just to show you what it looks like if we pass in arguments. So I'm going to do $ban, and we'll just say the ID is 123, the member's ID, the person that we're banning, and then we'll go ahead and give a reason, so spamming text channels. And if you look at the logs, you're going to see that this array we have 4 elements. The first element is always going to be 1, 2, 3, or whatever the actual the member ID is. Okay, and then the other elements are going to be the reason for this ban command. Okay, now there's a couple things that we need to do. First, we need to get the actual member ID, okay, from this array, and second, we need to get the actual reason. The problem here is that right now the reason is split up into it's split up into multiple different elements inside the array, and the reason why is because underneath the hood we are actually splitting up the arguments based off of spaces, and that's not the end of the world, because what we could do is we can just get all of the words and just join it back as a sentence. Okay, it's very, very simple. So first, let's go ahead and grab the ID from this array, and that's going to be very, very easy. So we're going to use some JavaScript magic. So what we'll do is we'll actually use a concept called array destructuring. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and use the const keyword and then square brackets equals args. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically, it's very similar to object destructuring if you have ever heard of it before. Okay, it's a very, very popular technique. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to extract, well, not really extract, but we're going to take the first value, the first element inside the args array, and store it inside a variable. Okay, to do that, we're going to go ahead and pass in member ID in between these square brackets. So what happens is the first element of args is going to be stored inside member ID. Okay, and all of the other elements inside the args array is going to be ignored. It's not going to modify the args array. All it's going to do is just take the first value and kind of like copy it over to member ID. So for example, if I go ahead and log member ID and log, I wish this stuff isn't blocking the view, the IntelliSense stuff, but it's okay. All right, so let's go ahead and run that command. You're going to see in the logs, you're going to see it logs the original args array. We get the actual member ID, and then we go ahead and we still have the original args array, and that's fine. Now that we have the member ID, we need to go ahead and grab the reason. Okay, but the reason can be a number of elements, right? For example, let's say for example, the reason could be just, one word. It could be spamming, right? But what if the person that's issuing the ban is trying to write like an actual description? How do we actually get that whole string? Well, what we can do is we can get that value from the args array by simply doing the same thing that we're doing with the member ID by using array destructuring. So instead of actually just doing something like reason like this, because what this is going to do is this will give you the second element inside the args array. Okay, so if you console log reason, it's going to give you whatever is the second element inside the array. So it's going to give us spamming because that's the second element. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a better understanding of how exactly array destructuring works. Okay, so member ID is going to be the first element in the array of args, and reason is going to be the second element in args, right? And if I want to get the third element, which is the value of text, I can do the same thing, right? But we don't want just spamming, we want spamming text channels. So what we can do is we can use the spreader operator before the reason keyword or the variable name. And what this will do is it will literally give us an array. Okay, so let me show you what that looks like. Remember, we're taking this one by one, so that way you all don't get confused. So you can see now that I've used the spreader operator, it pretty much takes all of the remaining values of args and it brings it inside an array, its own array. So you can think of it like, so in other words, you can think of it like it's taking all the values except for the actual member ID, and it's putting it inside its own. It's putting it inside its own array. Now, why is this? Why do we need this? Well, this is actually going to make it easier for us to get the actual reason, because what we could do now is we can go ahead and do something like reason.join, join it with a space. So that will give us the actual the reason, like the full reason. So if I go over here and I do the command again, you're gonna see that it gives me this. Okay, pretty cool. So that's pretty much the reason why we're going to do this. Okay, so now that we've done that, now that we have the member ID and the reason, what's next is we actually need to first ban the user, okay, and then we'll go ahead and save the record to the database. Okay, so to ban the user, it's going to be pretty simple. It takes 2 steps. First, we need to fetch the user to make sure that the user is actually in the guild. So I'm going to go and do try catch. Okay. So in case of any error happens, we can handle it accordingly. So we need to fetch the user. So I'll go ahead and do. Actually, I shouldn't call it a user. I'm going to call it a member instead, because there is like a difference between a user and a member based off of its definition. So to fetch the user, we're going to have to go ahead and reference message.guild.members.fetch. Okay. And I think we need to pass in we can pass in, I think, a member ID, I think. So pass in member ID, just like that. Yep. And this should give us back a member. So I'll console log the member dot user dot tag, and I'll console log any errors that happen. So let's go ahead and try this. You're gonna see that it's gonna, let's see, seems like it's not gonna log anything. Oh, actually, wait, okay, there we go. Yeah, you can see it gives us a 404. It says unknown user. So if the user's not found, then it's gonna throw an error, and that's correct because there's no user 123 that exists in our guild. Now let me go ahead and copy my my ID. So ban spamming. You're gonna see that it gives me back the user. Okay, Yahoo News. Okay, so we don't really need to worry about doing like a null check for the member. Actually, we will, just because TypeScript this can return undefined, so we will do a null check. Even though, like, it'll throw an error if the member's not found, but we'll still do a null check. So if member, actually, you know what? I'm gonna just do this so that way we know that this will be null, because if the member's not found, it's gonna throw an error. So I don't really see a point using an if statement for it anyways. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. So we know that the member is going to be truthy, so we'll do member.ban. And then we can pass in ban options. So the one that we'll need is the reason, obviously. And what I'll do is I'll just do reason.join, like that. So I'm taking this value, I'm taking this array reason, and I'm just calling .join, passing an empty string to join back all of those values into just one parameter. And that's it. So let's go ahead. And this actually returns a promise, and the resolve value is a guild member. So if you want, you can go ahead and you do something with it, but I'm not going to. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this out. So you're going to see that when I copy the ID, actually I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to do spamming all channels and being disrespectful. I think we have an error because the bot doesn't have permissions. Yeah, that's fine. Let me go ahead and make sure that my bot has permissions. I'll just create an admin role for now and give it admin permissions, but you can give it whatever permission that you want. Where is it? All right, cool. I think that's all we need to do. Let's go ahead and give the bot the admin role. All right, let's try it again. So we should see this member getting banned. There you go, it's gone. And so it was successfully banned, okay? And if I go into the server settings, if I go to the audit logs, you could see right over here, Discord dashboard bot banned Yahoo News, and it gives us the reason, okay? So what we could do is after the ban is successful, we just save it to the database, okay? So to save it to database, all we gotta do is just literally create an instance of guild ban log and then just use the repository, or we're gonna have to use the repository anyways, but then we're gonna just save it to the actual database record. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so how do we actually save it to the database? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the repository for guild ban log. Remember, we're using type ORM. So if we want to ever interact with the database to get values or get records and insert records or update records, we're going to have to use the repository API. Well, actually, you don't have to use the repository API. You could use like the connection API, and I think use that to like write raw SQL queries, but we're not going to do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is inside this constructor, I'm going to go ahead and do private read only guild ban log repository, and I'm going to type annotate this as guild ban log, just like that. I'm going to call this ban log repository. I don't really like the long name. Okay, cool. So now that we have the repository inside this ban command, this ban command.ts file, we're going to go ahead and create a new guild ban. So to do that, we're going to reference ban log repository, call the create method. Okay. Let me actually, you know what? Let me actually move this out of the way because I know it's because I have node mod, it's going to restart every single time, and it can get a little bit annoying. Okay, so we need to go ahead and pass in all of the properties that we need. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to put this to the side to make it easier for me to see. So we're going to need the guild ID. So message.guild ID, just like that. And it's going to give me an error because guild ID could be nullable. We'll fix that in just a bit. We're going to need the band member ID. So that'll just literally be the member ID. Okay, and then we're going to need the issued by. So that's going to be the user that banned the user that initiated the ban. Okay, to get that, we can just get the author of the command. Now, obviously, we are making an assumption that the person that is using this command has the correct permissions. Okay, but I'm going to let you all take care of that because you all probably have your own way to manage permissions. So I'll let you all take care of that. But like I said, we're making the assumption that the person that's using this command does have the correct permission. Okay, so we can assume that the author of the command is in fact the person that is issuing the command with the correct permission. So to get the actual person that issued the ban, we'll just do message.author.id. And that's just the user ID. And then for the reason, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go ahead and call this. I'm going to call this rest. I'm going to go and do const reason equals rest.join. Like that. So that way I can just clean this up a little bit. I'm going to reuse reason anyway, so might as well. And an issued on is just going to be a new date object. Now we're getting an error now because message .guild ID. This is possibly null. So what I'll do is I'm going to wrap everything. Here's what I'm going to do. If message.guild. Because there's a chance that guild could be null. I think it's because of I think it might be because of the intents. Which can be a little bit annoying, but you know what I'm gonna do for now? I'm just gonna actually just type assert this. Or not type assert, sorry. I'm just going to assert this so that way we know that this is going to not be null at all times. Okay. But I'll leave it like this just for now. Okay. Cool. So now that we have created an instance of our guild ban entity, all we gotta do is just save it to the database. So we'll do await this.ban log repository .save, pass in that guild ban object, or that guild ban log object, and then this will save it to the actual database table. And then we're going to go ahead and take a look at it inside our database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and first off, I'm going to unban the user. So let's just remove the ban. And we're going to have to join the server again. So let me do that. Okay, so I'm in the server again. We're going to go ahead and ban the user right now. So $ban. the ID, and I'll just go ahead and say being disrespectful and spamming users banned. If I go into my database, so let's go into our logs, not logs, sorry, our terminal. So let's go ahead and do select asterisk from guild underscore bans. Let's see what's going on. I think we might have gotten an error. Cannot read properties of undefined reading create. Oh, okay. So it seems like our repository is undefined. Quite interesting. Let me see how I did it in other. Oh, you know what it is? Oh, yeah. My bad. We made a mistake. I forgot to actually assign this to get repository. Yep. Quick little fix. For a second, I thought this was Nest.js where dependency injection was working, but I forgot that we actually need to assign this to the return value of get repository. Okay, this should fix it. Thank God for our previous commands. Okay, so let me go ahead and unban the user again. And I'll join the server. Okay. Ban the user, and now we should have, yep, perfect. So you can see that we now have a record in our guild bans table. We have the primary key, the auto-incremented ID. We have the guild ID. So now if you want to search based off of the guild ID, we can. We have the banned member ID. We have the person who issued the ban. We have the reason, and then we have the date that it was issued on. Okay, so obviously over time, when our database gets populated, what we can do is we can go ahead and obviously render this on some kind of dashboard. We can fetch it from our Nest.js API. Okay, but that's just pretty much the basics of creating these logs. Okay, now other things that you could do, and we'll probably do this in future episodes, is we can create our own logging channel to log actions created whenever we ban a user or kick a user. But we'll do that later on. So that's pretty much it for this episode. And what we're going to do in the next couple of episodes is I'm going to show you how we can create an endpoint to fetch all of the guild bans. And I'm going to show you how we can actually render that on the front end. And we'll do something where we can actually unban the user from the dashboard as well. So I'll see you all in the next episode. Peace out.